Jane Hedengren stood on the track with history closing in around her, and the problem was simple. She was too young to be feared this much, too new to be carrying this much expectation, too fresh into college running to be standing beside professionals, veterans, record holders, and women who had spent years building the kind of strength that distance running demands. But on the night of April 17th, 2026, at the Brian Clay Invitational in ncaa, California, Jane was not being treated like a freshman anymore. She was being watched like a threat. Because everyone inside that stadium knew something special was about to happen. The air was calm, the lights were bright, the crowd was waiting, and somewhere inside that pack of elite runners was an 18-year-old BYU freshman who had already started rewriting the limits of American distance running. But now, the question was no longer whether Jane Hedengren was talented. The question was whether the track world was ready for what she was becoming. Because in just 3 weeks, Jane had gone from rising star to record destroyer to one of the most terrifying young distance runners in the world. And before we get into how she did it, make sure you subscribe to the 90 Plus Legends, because stories like this are exactly why track and field is entering a new golden era. Now, let's go back to the night everything changed. The setting was James G. Presley Stadium. The meet was the Brian Clay Invitational, and for distance runners, this was not just another competition. Brian Clay has become one of those magical places where fast times are expected. The pacing is usually perfect, the fields are stacked, the atmosphere is electric, and when the conditions line up, records do not just fall, they get erased. But even by those standards, what Jane Hedengren was about to do felt unreal. She lined up for the 5,000 meters against some of the best runners in the country. There were professionals in the race, there were experienced collegiate athletes, there were women who had already proven themselves under pressure. And then there was Jane, young, calm, quiet, almost impossible to read. She did not bounce around nervously, she did not look overwhelmed. She did not look like an 18-year-old standing on the edge of one of the biggest performances of her life. She looked ready. And when the gun fired, Jane did not run like someone hoping to survive. She ran like someone who had already decided how the race was going to end. From the opening kilometers, she stayed composed. Her stride was smooth, her cadence was controlled, her face barely changed. And that is what made it so frightening, because when most runners chase a historic 5,000 meter time, the pain eventually reveals itself. The shoulders tighten, the arms get heavy, the breathing changes, the stride shortens, the face begins to show the cost of every second. But Jane looked different. She was not fighting the pace, she was floating through it. Lap after lap, she kept moving with the same cold rhythm, almost like the race was not happening to her, like she was controlling the race from somewhere above it. And then the clock stopped. 14 minutes, 50 seconds. In that moment, Jane Hedengren became the fastest woman in NCAA outdoor history over 5,000 meters. A freshman had just broken one of the most respected records in collegiate distance running. And not just any freshman, an 18-year-old who looked like she still had more to give. That was the terrifying part, because records are usually broken with desperation. You see the athlete empty themselves completely. You see the collapse. You see the cost. But Jane's performance did not look like a miracle, it looked like a warning. She had not just broken the record, she had made it look reachable. She had made it look repeatable. She had made the impossible feel like the beginning of something even bigger. And to understand why the track world reacted with so much shock, you have to understand whose record she had just moved beyond. Before Jane's explosion, Parker Valby had become the standard. Valby's name carried weight. Her performances had changed the way people looked at NCAA distance running. She had pushed the limits so far that many fans believed her records would stand for years, maybe even a decade. From a young age, she was chasing numbers that other kids did not even think about. In 6th grade, she reportedly set her sights not just on winning races, but on beating records held by boys. That detail matters, because it shows something important about Jane's mentality. She was never only trying to be good for her age. She was never only trying to be good among girls. She was chasing the outer edge of what was possible. And that mindset followed her through high school. At Timpview, Jane became a national force. She did not simply win races, she dominated them. She broke national high school records. She built a reputation as one of the most gifted young distance runners in the country. And when she capped off her senior year by winning Nike Cross Nationals in 2024, the message was clear. Jane Hedengren was not coming into college as a normal recruit. She was arriving as one of the most heavily watched distance talents in America. Naturally, every major program wanted her. Oregon wanted her. North Carolina State wanted her. Every powerhouse that dreams of building championship teams would have loved to put Jane in their uniform. But Jane made a decision that surprised some people. She stayed home. She chose BYU. And that decision may end up being one of the most important choices of her career. Because for Jane, BYU was not just a school, it was familiarity, it was family, it was community. It was a place where she could grow without being treated like a machine. And at the center of that environment was Coach Diljit Taylor. Coach Taylor has built one of the most respected women's distance programs in the country. But what makes her system special is not only the workouts, it is the culture. She talks about sisterhood, she talks about joy, she talks about protecting the athlete as a whole person, not just using them for points, trophies and records. And for someone like Jane, that matters. Because when you have this much talent at 18, the danger is not always that you will fail. Sometimes the danger is that everyone will try to rush your success. They will want more races, more records, more headlines, more proof. And if the system around you is not careful, greatness can become a burden before it becomes a legacy. But at BYU, Jane seems to have found something rare, a place that can challenge her without consuming her, a coach who can develop her without breaking her, a team that gives her belonging instead of isolation, and a home environment that allows her to stay grounded while the track world starts treating her like the future. Her father, John Hedengren, also has deep ties to BYU as a former All-American. That family connection gives Jane's story even more weight. She is not just wearing a uniform, she is carrying a legacy. But she is also building one of her own. And physically, what she is doing is extraordinary. Because running 30:46 for 10,000 meters and 14:50 for 5,000 meters requires more than talent. It requires a massive aerobic engine. It requires the ability to process oxygen at an elite level. It requires a body that can clear fatigue while still maintaining a punishing pace. It requires strength, efficiency, and patience. But it also requires restraint. That is the part many fans miss. When people see a runner this gifted, the instinct is to say, push harder, race more, train more, go after every record. But young distance runners are not machines. Jane is still a teenager. Her bones, tendons and muscles are still developing. The wrong training load could damage what makes her special. That is why BYU's approach seems so important. They are not simply trying to squeeze every result out of her right now. They are trying to protect the future. The training is not about endless punishment. It is about quality, strength, rhythm, altitude, recovery, confidence. The goal is not to make Jane tough enough to survive pain. The goal is to make her strong enough to run fast while staying healthy. And so far, the result has been devastating. Because Jane does not look like an athlete being forced into greatness. She looks like an athlete growing into it naturally. You can see it in how she races. You can hear it in how she speaks. After record-breaking performances, she does not come across as obsessed with numbers alone. She talks about teammates. She talks about joy. She talks about gratitude. And that emotional stability might be one of her greatest weapons. Because pressure changes athletes. Some athletes tighten under expectation. Some get distracted by attention. Some begin racing the headlines instead of the competitors. But Jane appears to have something different. A calm center, a quiet belief, a sense that she knows exactly who she is, even while the world around her is trying to figure out what she might become.
It felt like the beginning.
Because most athletes wait years for the perfect race. Jane seems to be finding one every time she steps onto the track. And if this is what she looks like at 18, then the rest of the running world has a serious problem. Jane Hedengren is not just the best freshman in the country. She is not just a record breaker. She is not just a BYU star. She is a generational talent standing at the edge of something much larger. And the scary part is, she may not even be close to her final form. So the next time Jane steps onto the track, do not look at her like a young athlete trying to prove herself. Look at her like history in motion, because every lap she runs now feels like a warning. Every record she breaks feels like a message, and every finish line she crosses feels like the sport itself is being pulled into a new era. Jane Hedengren did not wait for permission. She did not wait for age. She did not wait for experience. She arrived, she attacked, and she left the track world breathless. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and stay tuned for more powerful stories from the world of athletics. Because Jane Hedengren's journey is only beginning, and if this is only the beginning, then what comes next might be even more unbelievable.